Welcome everybody. Today I'm going to be going over the preview for Star Wars Armada Wave 6 of the Hammerhead Corvette, and it's not out yet, but all the details have been released and I'm going to go over my initial impressions. I'm overall really excited for this ship, and I like the fact that they're actually giving you two rather than just a one. So it's definitely a much better deal, particularly in what we're going to go through a little bit later on with some of the titles. There's two versions of this ship. There's the Hammerhead Torpedo Corvette, and then there's the Hammerhead Scout Corvette. Torpedo Corvette has a red, a blue, and a black from the front and can use a ordnance upgrade. Or the Hammerhead Scout Frigate has two reds and a blue from the front and only blues on the side. All of which only have two shields in the front, one shield on the rest of the ship, and none of them have any fire ability from the rear. One has a black anti-squadron, the other one has a blue anti-squadron. They both have a single evade, a single redirect, and a single contain. They're relatively maneuverable. At speed 1, it's a double click. At speed 2, it's a single click and 2 double click. At speed 3, it's a single click and then a blank one at the end. So you're more maneuverable in the beginning and then you push forward. They are very cheap, even cheaper than the CR90 Corvette. The Torpedo Frigate is 36 points and the Scout Frigate is 41 points compared to the 44 points that the Corvette A is, and I believe the 39 points that the Corvette B is. So they're very cheap ships. They have 5 health rather than the 4 health of the CR90s, but they have significantly less shields. And the CR90s have 2 evades and can go up to speed 4. So a little bit of a balance there. There's some really interesting titles for this one. One particularly interesting, especially with Rogue One, is Garland's Honor. When you overlap an enemy ship, the enemy ship suffers a face-up damage card instead of a face-down damage card. So that's particularly interesting. It's 4 points, so a little bit expensive, but if you're really planning on ramming a vessel and really parking it in front of it, doing a face-up is definitely much more damage than doing a face-down. An interesting new component of this is a non-unique title. So you have Task Force Antilles, which is 3 points. When you suffer damage from an attack, you may choose and exhaust a copy of this card on another friendly ship at distance 1 to 3. If you do, that ship suffers 1 damage instead. While this card is exhausted, you cannot spend engineering points. What you do is if you're flying in formation with multiple versions of this ship that have this card, what you go ahead and do is when one of your ships suffers that damage, you can go ahead and have some of that damage go through to other vessels. So giving them more life and maybe being able to cause more ramming and just be able to get its firing in rather than being wiped out by a single forward salvo from the front. It's 3 points. Obviously, if you're going to do this, you're going to want to commit and probably have at least 2, obviously 3, maybe even 4 of these Corvettes, and just really have them focus on it. This makes them a little bit more survivable, but if you're going to have a team of them, it's quite a number of total points, but it could make a significant difference when you're dying. Next one is Task Force Organa. While attacking, you may choose and exhaust a copy of this card on another friendly squadron at distance 1 to 3 to reroll 2 attack die. While this card is exhausted, you cannot attack ships. Again, it's only 1 point, so a lot less, and it just allows you to do some rerolls. This will probably be more useful for the version of the ships that have red die. That way you can have one ship that's at long range go ahead and fire, and they go ahead and do a reroll, and then let the other ones that are maybe the ones with the red, blue, and black version go later on when the enemy is closer by. So it's just a little bit of a turn order of when you want to go ahead and re-roll those die. I think it'll be interesting, but I'm just curious to see how it plays out in these formations And unfortunately, to really give it a try, you pretty much have to buy 2 of these packs to have 3 or 4 of these ships really give its all. But it's definitely going to be an interesting component. This one has boarding engineers, which I think could be useful, but it's only 2 points. It's a discard. When you reveal a command, you may discard a squadron dial or token and discard and choose one enemy ship at close range. Look at its face down damage cards and then flip up the number of them up to your engineering value one at a time. So the engineering value of this ship is only 2, so you're only going to be able to flip up 2 cards. There's not that many ships that you'll be able to also apply this to. You would be able to put it on an assault frigate as well, but you're really not in close range of that often, and you rather have gunnery teams for the most part. Especially if you had Dodonna, you know there's some really nasty structural damage ones on there. Another version of boarding engineers, and it's Cam Syndulla. When you reveal a dial, it's the same thing as Squadron Van. You may choose one enemy ship with close range. If you do, you may choose one new command for each command dial assigned to that ship. So obviously you can go ahead and put this one on a Star Destroyer or an Interdictor and mess up their whole command structure. You could find a carrier and give it a navigate one for every single turn. Or if there's no squadrons around, go ahead and switch it to a squadron ones. It's 5 points, but if you're already planning on doing a lot of close range damage, it could be an interesting way to sabotage and disrupt the ability of the rebels. But it is also a discard for 5 points, so you just got to keep that in mind. Another unique officer being added in this game is Hondo. At the start of the ship phase, you may discard this card to choose 2 command tokens and place them on 2 different ships. When your opponent chooses 2 different command tokens that you did not choose, and place them on 2 of their ships. So he's playing both sides. It's only 2 points, but gives you the command tokens that you want. It's a little bit double-edged, but it could be some interesting strategies depending on if you're playing on versions that you really want those other upgrades that you really want to have those command tokens to in order to discard. The new admiral for this one is Leia Organa. Leia Organa is a whopping 38 points. However, when a friendly ship resolves a command by spending a command dial, if it has not resolved another command this round, so that means it doesn't have a token of a different type, it may resolve that command as if it spent a matching command token. If it does, that ship cannot resolve additional commands this round. So that means if you have a navigate, you can act as if you have a navigate and a navigate token. So you can increase or decrease your speed by 2. Or if you have a concentrate fire, you can have it add a die and do a reroll. Or if you have an engineering, you get your normal engineering value as well as half your engineering value rounded up also included. So it's essentially very similar to having a Captain Antilles on all of your vessels. Well, I don't know if that's better or worse, but it's different, especially for a lot of ships that only have 1 command value. You can go ahead and keep that navigate that you're always going to want to keep in your pocket in case you move it, but you can still go ahead and have increased power version of commands, and as long as you don't also spend that navigate, you'll be able to do an extra powerful version of this. I think this is actually going to be really useful for when you have a bunch of Sierra 90s and then later on Hammerheads. This actually makes Hammerheads not too terrible at doing even squadron commands, because now they effectively have a squadron command value of 2 and they're pretty cheap. Or being able to really adjust their speed, it makes their engineering a little bit better, but you're probably going to be using concentrate fire a little bit more often. Leia Organa is going to be useful, but not as useful as Sloane. I think Sloane you're going to see a huge amount of. I think Leia Organa, you're going to see her mostly on large numbers of smaller ships rather than the larger ones, where that extra token just isn't as useful. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we'll start seeing it used much more. Overall, I'm really excited about both of these additions on the Imperial and on the Rebel side. I think it's really going to change some of the tactics. Rebel players, you got to bring your A game for the squadrons because Sloane is going to be really nasty. And for Imperials, prepare to just be rammed to death by a whole fleet of cheap, disposable torpedo frigates. In particular, you're going to see more Riken with these ships because they will be able to get up close, fire, ram. Then even if the Imperial player fires and destroys them, they're still going to be there as a zombie Riken one and will go ahead and cause another ram damage. And particularly if you have the title where you are doing face up. So you'll be able to do that. Hopefully you'll be able to do that maybe even 2 turns before you actually get killed. I don't think you're going to see that much Mon Mothma because there's only one evade and you're going to get up really close. And just having that reroll and just one of them isn't that big of a deal. So I think Riken and Organa are going to be more common. I think if you're going to have either one of these, I think you're probably going to have Janice Light, a CR-90, be the flagship of this Corvette swarm. So it can hide in the back, be obstructed by all these other vessels in front of it, and then fire its long-range dice with a turbo laser reroute to keep it safe. So that's my predictions. What are you most excited about? Do you think the Imperials are getting a better deal in Wave 6, or do you think it's going to be the Rebels? Please write your comment section below.